Can we put this right here? Good evening, everybody. The City of Peabody Zoning Board of Appeals meets remotely this evening in accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 40A and 40B, and Governor Baker's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. Individuals may participate remotely in the meeting via a participation platform called Zoom. So tonight we have the continued application of HDG King Street LLC, care of attorney Jason Panos, for Chapter 40B comprehensive permit as it applies to the premise known as 15 King Street, Peabody, Mass, map 074, lot 258. Petitioner seeks to construct 133 units. The property is located in an R2 zoning district. We opened this meeting on October 5th and heard Attorney Panos's presentation. Tonight, we will hear from the following. We will hear from Kurt Bellavance, who is the Director of Community Development. We will then hear from department heads. We will then hear from city officials, abutters, and any other public concerns. So that is the order. I will be keeping the order flowing. And right now, we are going to hear from Mr. Kurt Bellavance, the Director of Community Development. Kurt, you're on.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. We're here this evening to hear testimony in regards to the King Street project. As Chairman Galuggi had mentioned, there was a presentation that was presented last month. We knew that would take up some time. We wanted people to have a chance, mostly abutters, to have a chance to take a look at that information, hear what the applicant had to say. In the meantime, between that meeting and this meeting, we've asked for people to submit letters, submit emails, or provide some testimony or information to the board as well as for us, so we can take a look at that information as the board deliberates this process. In the meantime, we did seek out our own city consultants, which is called peer review. We did bring on board people to take a look at water and sewer, site design, traffic. And so we've engaged with those engineers, and we're having them come on board so they'll be able to take a look and work with city staff to review the information that's being presented. One of the the biggest part of this meeting would be the information provided from the residents. We're happy to hear exactly what you're feeling and what you think about the project. We'll take that testimony, we'll provide that to our peer review as well as other city staff members. And then we'll take that information and work with the zoning board in regards to that and providing that along with them and discussing this project. I expect there to be a few more meetings in regards to this, especially I think we're going to try to get a specific meeting just to talk about traffic. We've heard from people that would be a concern, so we're going to plan on doing that, and we'll set that up later in this evening through the chair. But that's sort of my quick overview. Really, this meeting is set up for the public to provide input so that you can take that testimony and make that part of the record.
Thank you, Kurt. Okay, so now we are going to hear from department head from the fire department, Captain Dowling. Captain Chris Dowling. Just make sure you unmute. Can't hear you. Check your volume.
Tell him we can't hear him.
Still can't hear you.
Go back to you. He's gotta take his earbuds out. No.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, you know, we good?
There we go. Thank you.
Apologize for the delay. I'm Chris Dowling. I'm the Fire Prevention Officer for the Peabody Fire Department. We've been reviewing this project for quite a while now. There are a couple of different aspects. It's the demolition that we're concerned with, and of course the construction. The concerns that we've had were fire department apparatus access. And on page 820 of the preliminary plan, they showed we required 18 feet for our apparatus to access, but we also require a minimum of a 25-foot inside turning radius. The architect never provided us with that. So when I look at the plan, I can see that we can get in, but we can turn around, and my concern is building A in the rear and building C in the rear for our apparatus to even get in. So that's one of our concerns, and they haven't addressed that yet. The sprinkler system is something that we'll address when construction comes around, but I want to talk about the demolition. The demolition, there was a concern about that the construction company was fencing in a fire hydrant. We won't allow that. The existing fire hydrants are for the existing neighborhood. So if the demolition company needs water, they either have to provide their own or put their own temporary fire hydrant in. We're not going to allow them to use a fire hydrant that is used for that neighborhood already. But when it comes to the hydrant flows around in the area, there's a good water flow, so they have plenty of water. And I don't know, and this is probably something for Will Politz to talk about, is the impact with this type of construction with these many units, about what that's going to affect, because right now it's good, but maybe it won't be. But that's something for the city engineer to address, but it's a concern of ours. Those are the three things that concern us. Does anyone else have any questions about the impact in this with life safety?
Ask him any questions.
Does the board have any questions?
No, nothing for me right now.
Okay.
Those are our main concerns.
Okay, thank you very, very much. We also have letters from the planning board, building department, health department, community development, and Peabody Municipal Light Plant. At this point, I need a motion to accept these letters into the record.
So moved.
And a second? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
So these letters will be made part of the public record. And anyone that wishes a copy, Attorney Panos, yours will be sent to you tomorrow. Anybody from that would like a copy of any of these letters, please contact Carla McGrath, who is the zoning board secretary, and her number is 978-538-5792. 978-538-5792. If I said that too fast, I'll say it one more time. 978-538-5792. If there's anybody listening that would like a copy of those letters. Now,
Nobody has any questions for Chris.
right. Now we have, we're going to listen to or hear from city officials. And we have letters from Representative Walsh, Senator Lovely, Counselor at Large Ryan Melville, and City Councilor Ann Manning. I need a motion to accept Representative Walsh, Senator Lovely, and Counselor at Large Melville. We are going to read Ann Manning's into the record. I believe she's with us and would like to speak afterwards. So may I have a motion to accept the other three letters now?
Move to
So
accept.
moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And once again, if there's anybody in the audience or listening that would like a copy of those letters, once again, please contact Carla McGrath at the building department, and she can advise you either mail them out or email them. All right. That being said, moving right along, we have a letter from addressed to myself, the chair, and the members of the zoning board from Counselor at Large Ian Manning, and I believe our secretary, Deanne, could you please read that into the record?
Sure, Fran. This letter is dated September 29th, 2020. Dear Fran Gallucci and the honorable members of the Peabody Zoning Board of Appeals, as a 20-year elected representative of the city of Peabody, both as a school committee member and currently as a city councilor, I am writing to share with you the many reasons the application for 133 housing units for 15 King Street, Peabody, submitted by Hemisphere Development Group LLC, HDG, must be drastically scaled down to a more reasonable project. But first, let me say this: affordable housing is a priority in Peabody. Peabody is a welcoming community and is friendly to affordable housing. Affordable housing has been a priority for Peabody since 2004, when we adopted inclusionary zoning requirement of 15% affordability for new housing developments. We have recently increased our efforts in 2019 to include more affordable housing by adopting a 20% inclusionary zone in a newly created residential overlay district. Peabody also partnered with Wind Development with the unanimous city council vote to utilize $1.6 million of the city's community preservation fund to preserve 235 affordable units for many of our seniors and disabled residents. Peabody has made so many strides in providing affordable housing. An internal assessment to determine if we have already met the 10% threshold required of us is warranted and underway. Traffic and safety: there is no public transportation nearby. The proposed 1.6 parking spaces per unit is insufficient for a project of this magnitude. Traffic at this area is the worst throughout the city. According to recent 2019 data released by Mass Department of Transportation, the intersection at which this project will be located, King, Lowell, and Endicott, is the most dangerous location in the city, resulting in the most car crashes. The area is impassable during the winter, given King Street's steep incline, presenting dangerous conditions. School buses already avoid this main street for safety reasons and their inability to make the turn at, again, the city's most dangerous intersection. Everybody loses based on the disastrous potential impact of this massive project. I beg you to reduce the size of this proposal at this location. Both the existing residents of the surrounding neighborhood as well as the new residents of the new development will suffer. If the original proposed project is approved, I can assure you that the quality of life for all will be ruined, and the city of Peabody will never recover from the resonating, damaging effects felt throughout the city caused by a project of this density, as this densely populated and overstressed location. Sincerely, Ann Manning Martin, Councilor at Large.
Thank you, Dan. Councilor Manning, would you like to, I know there is some, a couple of other points you'd like to bring up right now?
Yes, can you hear me, Fran?
Yes, I can.
Excellent. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I want to thank you for reading my letter into the record and accepting it. And I also, again, want to thank all of the members of this volunteer board. This is probably one of the most important boards in the city, and the fact that we're facing this huge project is really weighing heavily on your shoulders, and I have the utmost faith in this board to do the right thing and look out for the city of Peabody. I truly do. I sent that letter with my concerns, and it's compiled from my experience and in listening to my constituents and my familiarity with that neighborhood in particular, as well as the city. And I want to thank this board. It's an autonomous, appointed, non-elected board that I have appreciation for and respect for. To look, and I look forward to a fair hearing, that the residents will be heard, they'll be respected, and their concerns will be considered. And I really want to stress to my constituents that the best place for this project to be heard is before this board with these members of the ZBA, the current members, in my opinion, is the best place for this to be hammered out. And I want to just stress to my constituents that the ZBA, this board, they are not the enemy. They are here. They are residents themselves. They are experienced. They have experience with, this isn't their first rodeo. This isn't their first 40B. They have been working diligently on large projects, 40B projects down on Oak Street, and also the one on Sonic. So, you know, this is the place for it to be heard. I trust them, and I want my constituents to know that they will be heard. This ZBA is not going to ram anything through. They are really going to do their due diligence, and I really trust them, and I just wanted to express that to my constituents listening at home, because this is such a huge project that affects their quality of life, and I want them to know that, again, these are the people that you want hearing this project, and they're going to do the right thing. I'm quite confident. So with that, I just had one last question, if I may, Madam Chair, and it's regarding safe harbor. If I could ask of you, does the city plan to move forward on looking for safe harbor protection with this project at all? And that was my final comment and question. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Manning. That's a very good question. I don't believe that we qualify for any of that, but I am going to refer now to Attorney Panos for a more involved explanation. So Attorney Panos, Safe Harbor.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Jason Panos, practicing law at 246 Andover Street. Can you just confirm that you can hear me?
I can.
Excellent, thank you. So there are 4 safe harbors prescribed by 40B, and we obviously looked at them, each of the 4. The obvious one is whether or not the city has met its 10% subsidized housing inventory mandate, which it has not as of the time of filing this application. The second safe harbor is whether or not of all developable property in the city, that would include the shopping mall, Centennial Office Park, each and every neighborhood in the city, anything that has a building and a structure on it and is subject to zoning, whether or not 1.5% of that property is set aside for affordable housing purposes, not just set aside, but actually has affordable housing as that is defined by DHCD, and 40B has that housing constructed upon it. It is a safe harbor that is often put forward by cities and towns without any evidence provided and backup, and it is 100% of the time shot down by DHCD and the Housing Appeals Committee, which is where these matters are typically adjudicated. So we are confident that the city does not meet that safe harbor. I don't want to be accused of misstating facts. There was a case recently in Watertown where they actually did meet their safe harbor, but they have a lot of that 1.5% safe harbor, but they just had nearly 1,000 units go online recently, which would be included, which got them over the hump. They are a very unique circumstance. And by the way, that matter has not been adjudicated before the Housing Appeals Committee, and we expect it will be, and potentially overturned. The third safe harbor, the city doesn't qualify for, because that is whether or not it's made appreciable progress or any progress toward the goals articulated in the city's housing production plan. You may know that the housing production plan has languished in the city for almost 2 years. We are currently without one. So that safe harbor would not apply. And then the fourth safe harbor would be whether or not we propose a large-scale project. A large-scale project in the city of Peabody would be 300 or more units. We are not proposing that. So to address that, you are free to look into those four things. They're articulated in 760 CMR section 56.03, but quite frankly, we would not have spent the time, the money, the resources into proposing this this development if we thought that there was even a slight chance that the city met any of its safe harbors. I hope that answers that question.
Thank you, Jason. Is there anybody else that would like to speak at all on this,
City officials.
on the safe harbor stuff? Ezra?
Sure, I can just weigh into, I mean, just because it's a little bit of an awkward situation where you don't want to simply accept the applicant's attorney telling you, so I'm Ezra Glenn, I'm working with the town as a consultant, paid for by Mass Housing Partnership, but working for the town. The question of safe harbor is one that's always looked at right at the beginning. And Kurt and I spoke, and I believe you've checked in even with city solicitor. I'm not an attorney, but I would pretty much concur with everything Jason said, that there don't seem to be any reasonable cases of how this meets the safe harbor. There was one last remaining possible safe harbor. It doesn't apply here either, but I think it's worth knowing just for public information. And that's if an applicant has come in with a related project and been turned down by your board on a site, and then essentially tries to use 40B as a club later. You denied my project, I'm going to come in with a 40B. That's another kind of a safe harbor, but I don't believe that applies here as well. But just so you know, that was something the general court adopted. So thanks.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Pardon me, I did miss that safe harbor, and it's important to note the reason why it doesn't apply here is because the city has inclusionary zoning. You may recall that the matter was before the city council. Well, there was an application before the city council on a special permit prior to the filing of the comprehensive permit. Because that proposal had built into it 15% of that housing stock set aside for affordable purposes, that takes it out from under the that particular safe harbor. Ezra is 100% right, and I apologize, I missed that one. It's an important one. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the board? Are there any other city officials, just right now, just city officials that would like to speak?
So I have two. I have John S. and I have
Mr. Hockman? Yeah, Jared, are you there? Go ahead. If you would like to speak, go ahead.
Good evening, Chairwoman and members of the Zoning Board of Appeals, as well as guests. Looks like Mr. Glenn a consultant, and Mr. Attorney Panos representing the applicant. I'm going to speak twice tonight, if that's okay. I'm going to speak now as an elected official, and then later on, under the parameters that Chairwoman Galuggi has laid out, I'll speak as an abutter and a resident of the neighborhood. So if it pleases.
You couldn't roll it all into one, Jared?
Franny, I got a lot to say tonight. But I'll start as a school committee member with that hat. I concur with Councilor Manning Martin that this is one of the most important boards or commissions in the city. You each take this responsibility extremely seriously, and the residents, or at least this resident of the city and this public official of the city, is grateful for your service, your commitment, and your consideration. In regard to the 40B application, I'd like to point out initially on the April 30th, 2020 approval from Mass Housing, on page 3, Mass Housing states explicitly that they exclude any consideration regarding to public schools from their consideration in the approval of the 40B application. So you have fresh eyes on the issues that are going to affect every student in the city of Peabody, as well as residents throughout the city of Peabody, if you were to merely rubber stamp or approve this project as presented. And by the way, I will point out that you do have the authority to not only negotiate with the developer, as is presumed by the legislature in enacting Mass General Law, Chapter 40B, but you have the ability to modify the proposal so that it conforms with certain local needs. You're not obligated to merely say it's 133 units or it's nothing. In regard to the schools, I can tell you that with the current population in the Emerson Park neighborhood, and I suspect that many of you drive through this neighborhood fairly regularly, there are more and more cars parked on the streets than I've seen in the 18 years I've lived in the neighborhood. Currently, as recently as today, and as frequently as every day for the last 6 to 8 months, there are cars parked on the sidewalks of Ellsworth Road. And I asked the commissioners who have not been in this neighborhood recently to drive through here at dusk and see what students, or it's not dusk, it's sunrise, see what students are going to go through waiting at a bus stop or walking to school before daylight savings kicks in, when it's still dark until 7:15 and 7:30 in the morning. And we have high school students standing outside on bus stops at 6:30, at 6:25, so that they can get to school in a timely fashion. Take a look at what a student and their family who would walk to the center school or the Higgins Middle School would have to go through to pass cars that are half on the sidewalk and half on the street. And some of these cars are parked at intersections, Kosciuszko and Ellsworth, Augustus and Ellsworth, King and Ellsworth, where students who may not be so tall, think of your children who are in 6th grade and having to look over an SUV that's parked on the sidewalk and in the street to have to see if there's oncoming traffic. It poses a considerable danger to add 300 plus vehicles to this neighborhood with the proposed development, most of which will have off-site parking, further increasing the difficulties with which our students will have to navigate their walk to school. We currently have, and Councilor Manning Martin addressed some of this in her letter to the board. We currently have 23 school buses, all of which are utilized at the Higgins Middle School twice a day. Prior to about 2016, those school buses would travel through this neighborhood and exit up Columbus Road. And when they entered the neighborhood from the west, they would enter through Thorndike Street. Sometime around 2016 or 2017, that changed, and they started utilizing King Street for both entry and exit to the neighborhood. Shortly thereafter, a left turn lane was put on Lowell Street to turn onto Endicott Street, reducing the turning radius to go west off of King Street onto Lowell Street. Around that time, buses deemed it unsafe to continue utilizing the intersections of King and Lowell Street and started exiting and entering this neighborhood through Emerson Street. There is a tremendous, Emerson Street has traffic traveling in two directions. As recently as 2 weeks ago, a school bus that was coming off of Lowell Street and up Emerson Street had to back down, go into reverse gear to back down the hill on Emerson Street back onto Lowell Street because Emerson Street was impassable for that bus due to the traffic parked on both sides of Emerson Street. Adding 150, 200, 250 cars to this neighborhood, they're gonna spill over to Emerson Street. They're not just gonna park on King Street. They're not just gonna park on Ellsworth Road. Emerson Street is immediately around the corner from this proposed project. There is no parking on Southwick, so I'm going to exclude that from consideration for off-street parking. With regard to the proposal, and I think that if this board were to issue a permit for this project, you would require snow to be removed from the site if the snowfall exceeded a certain amount, presumably 2 inches or 3 inches, so that all of the off-street parking that is proposed with this project could be utilized as presented. Where are those cars going to park when the snow is being removed from the King Street site? They're going to park on the street. And when they park on the street, how are the city employees and private contractors who plow for the city going to effectively remove snow so that pedestrians, students can walk safely to and from school? We have one police station in the city of Peabody. It's located extremely close to this project. Those police officers are our most effective tool for eliminating or reducing the risk of a horrific event from happening at any one of our schools. And don't say it won't happen here, because that's what every community has said over the past 20 years with school shootings and active shooters and all of those events. And any reduction in response time due to the increased traffic that is going to be associated with this project is unacceptable to me as a school committee member. the school capacity for the Higgins exceeded the school capacity at the Higgins exceeded what we built just a few years ago in the first year we opened that school. It continues to grow at the Higgins Middle School. There is no more room for students. The capacity at the center school continues to grow and is already over 400 students due to the increase in the development of terrace estates and other rental housing that is within the center school geographic district. The Welsh School has 79% of its students who are below poverty that require additional services, has a large majority of students who are English second language learners.
Jared,
Yep.
that's really not part of what we're talking about here.
Well-
We're not concerned with the type of students that are enrolled in each school, okay?
I understand that, Chairwoman. I'm just pointing that out because of the resources that are devoted to those schools when Mr. Panos now at some point talks about the capacity of each classroom.
You don't know
I'll move
what
on.
Mr. Panos is going to talk about.
Okay.
So,
We,
try right now, what I'm asking you is to try to stick to some important points of just the development. We can't be concerned with, I understand that, there will be children moving in if this project gets approved, but that's not to say that there won't be a house sold on Ellsworth Road with somebody that has 7 children. You're making this, I really don't want this to be a dissertation on assumptions. Thank you.
no, thank you. I will say, though, that the proposal has 130 units on 3.12 acres, which is 42.63 units per acre. So to compare that to a single family house that might be sold with 7 children, I understand your point, and I'm going to move on, but that's a fact. Under our current learning environment, we have some students who are wholly remote due to certain reasons that they keep to themselves because of COVID, and we have some teachers that are working from their houses. The point of this is houses are now classrooms. They're not just places for people to go to after school. They are classrooms now for many people in this neighborhood. The demolition of the hospital and construction of 3 5-story buildings could have impact on learning environments. For those reasons and others I'll bring up as a resident of the neighborhood later on in this meeting, I would ask the board to take a serious look at the size and scope, the traffic impact, and I would also bring up, and I don't know if Captain Dowling is still with us, but he brought up a fire hydrant issue. And I will point out, and I don't know the answer to this, and if Captain Dowling is still here, maybe he can answer, but the fire hydrant on the corner of Ellsworth Road and Emerson Street is not functioning. Hi, Captain, if I may, through Ms. Guluji.
So you would like Captain Dowling to respond to that?
Right.
Is that correct, Jared?
If he's able to.
Yep.
Yeah, Mr. Hockman, I don't know if the condition of that hydrant, it's on the corner of Ellsworth and where? Southwood?
Emerson.
Emerson.
Yeah.
I would have to look to see.
Okay.
It shouldn't be. If it was, there'd be a bag on top of it.
There is a bag on top of it.
Okay, then it is.
Yeah.
Maybe if Will Politz is here, he might be able to help me out with that. Because we don't have control of the hydrants, we maintain them, but they know the condition of the hydrants and they let us know. And really that's for the fire suppression people, that they know if the hydrant's available for them or not. Will? Do you have any idea about this particular hydrant?
It's the first I heard about this particular hydrant, but we can address it through our department. If this hydrant's not working, I will verify if it's on a list at the moment or in our system. If not, we will. Either way, public services will address the any hydrant that's currently not functioning out there.
Yeah, and I don't bring it up to criticize, just to raise a fact due to the proximity of this project.
Nope. I'd rather find out about it. Like I said, if it's bagged, it's probably known by the water department based upon the fact you're telling me it's bagged. But I can find out tomorrow what the status is with it.
Okay,
Thank you.
that's great. Thank you. Are there any other city officials before we move on to the abutters? Ooh, that would like to speak. Ryan?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can.
All right, great. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I appreciate the opportunity, and I know this is a great board. I've had the opportunity to work with all of you in the past couple of years, and I want to thank all the city employees involved in this. This kind of been hanging over the city since I joined the council in 2017. I've become acquainted to the issues regarding this particular property with the folks in the neighborhood. I think anybody that drives by it right now would find the property in deplorable conditions. So if the ownership is on here now, I've heard from a number of neighbors, those are neighbors that were not necessarily opposed to the original application that went before the city council, that are now just, really lost it with the way that property is currently, the condition it's currently in. And frankly, it gives me pause long-term about what the property will look like as we move forward. So, I've kind of lost some of the goodwill I had going back to 2017 on some of the proposals that had come forward. So I had sent a letter in opposition to the 40B application back, I believe it was last February. And in that, I was very specific to, the city of Peabody has made great strides in affordable housing. And I thought it was quite unfortunate that we couldn't hash out this particular project at the city council level. I thought we had the opportunity we could find some common ground so that this project wouldn't impact the city. And I really am relying on this board. And I know you guys will look out for the best interests of the city as we move forward with this. But my concerns, you're going to hear a lot of the same concerns over, so I don't want to belabor the points. But this is going to be a much larger project with a larger capacity than was previously proposed. And that's concerning just in the matter of where it is currently located. The intersection of Lowell Street, King Street is not a particularly good one. You add in Southwick, and then you have the school areas. You have multiple schools within a quarter of a mile. And it is concerning. And it's something that we got to pay attention to. I'm also worried about the strain on city services. This is the densest part of the city by population, not necessarily by single or three-family homes, but with the tanneries and the other housing that you have in that area, it is somewhat concerning. So I'm just, frankly, I just would like to make sure that this property owner going forward with whatever they do come up with would stay by their agreements, because the current state is it's really in disrepair. In preparation for this meeting, I went by to take a look at the property, and it was not in the best shape. I had actually sent the letter I had sent to the housing state housing folks to Carla earlier for part of the record that identifies some of those issues. But I just wanted to make sure I spoke, let you know where my stance is as a city councilor. And I appreciate all your work on this. I know there's multiple 40Bs in front of this board. You guys are experts on this, and I really do rely on your judgment, and I really trust on it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ryan, very much. Are there any other officials, city officials, that would like to speak? Okay, we do have some abutter letters. And we need to accept 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 6 abutter letters that we need to have accepted into the record. I'm then going to have our secretary, Dan Senzabaugh, read the name and address of each person and bullet point what they said in their letter. After that, we'll hear from any and all abutters that are listening tonight. However, if the person before you, if the person that spoke 5 people in front of you have said everything that you want to say, please just give your name and address for the record, and you can say, I agree with the people that spoke before me. What we can't have tonight, it just doesn't make any sense, is to have people repeat. We know traffic is a huge problem. We know that. If you have anything different to add about traffic, that's fine, but we know traffic is a huge, huge problem. We heard that it might be a strain on the water. We know about the schools. So you could just give your name and address for the record and say you agree with everybody prior, and that it counts. You know, I know everybody wants to have their voice count, but what we can't have this evening is repetition, repetition, repetition. So we're going to move forward. I need a motion to accept the abutter letters that Dan will speak about momentarily.
Move to accept.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. So Dan, could you please read the name and address of everybody of the letters you have in front of you, and just give us the bullet points, please?
Sure, Fran. The first letter is from Mary Balistracci at 1 Southwick Road. And Mary had the following concerns regarding fire hydrant access, prohibiting the use of Southwick for construction vehicle parking and egress as it's private, extensive opposition from neighbors. HDG LLC hasn't kept up the site since they took possession and has allowed it to fall into disrepair. Failed upkeep caused negative impact for residents, artificial light pollution, a lack of information on lighting, lack of mitigation to vibration during construction, lack of public transportation, center school at or over capacity. Infrastructure is old, poor water pressure, 5-year construction time is excessive, height of building causes deprivation of sunlight, solar panel access, construction of water table will increase flooding potential, and water pollution issues. The second letter is from Cristiano Teixeira, 25 Cusco Street. Size is too big, integrity of the neighborhood, strain on infrastructure, public safety, overcrowding school system, parking concerns, traffic safety concerns, and concerns about snow removal. The next letter is from Sedalia Silver at 28 King Street. She had a traffic concerns and proximity to the middle and grammar school. Jose Silva, 28 King Street. His concerns were to do with the integrity of the neighborhood, size of the project, and strain on infrastructure. Next letter was from Albert and Brenda Rizzo of a 27 Cost. How do you say that, Fran?
Kiosko.
Okay, that Kosciuszko Street. Detriment to the public good, integrity of the neighborhood, height, size, snow removal, parking, strain on the school system, traffic and infrastructure concerns. And then finally, the sixth letter is from Marla Tremblay at 10 King Street. And she had concerns about the traffic study validity since it was done pre-COVID. And what is a half of a parking spot? Location of building C is too close. Can it be centered on the property? And finally, she had a concern relating to the upkeep of the property. And those are the six letters.
Thank you. Before we go on, I just want to make sure Are there any members of the zoning board that have any comments, concerns, or questions right now? Okay, so at this point, we will hear from audience participation. And you need to raise your hand and we will call upon you.
You're muted, Fran.
Am I unmuted?
No, Fran is muted though.
Yes, you're unmuted, Colleen.
Okay, thank you. This is Colleen and Dawn Shaw. We're from 3 Kings, Southwick Road. Geez. We agree with everything that's been said tonight. I just want to say that we were in favor of the original development with the 55 and over. The things that we are concerned about are the poles, the light poles on Southwick Road, because we don't have a sidewalk and because the development, the last time I saw it, was very close to our street. We're wondering what they're gonna do with the light poles. Another concern was the dumpsters. We noticed that they had the dumpsters all kind of on Southwick Road. I know you guys all know, but we definitely have a rat issue right now. I can't even imagine how it's gonna be with the dumpsters all on Southwick Road. I thought it was 6 years. They were gonna do construction for 6 years. I'm just wondering why that's gonna take so long. And then what was the other, there was one more thing, Dawn, can you think of it?
No.
Nope, we can't think of it right now. But thank you very much for hearing us.
Fran, you're still muted.
Oh, for goodness sakes. Thank you very much. Next person will be,
You were first.
E6530.
I'll plug this in.
Who is not muted?
Hello?
Yep, okay, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Brenda Rizzo. My husband Albert and I sent in the letter. I agree with everything everyone else has said. I just wanted to add one more point. They had mentioned developing it and putting in trees all around the perimeter of the property to kind of camouflage the buildings. As those trees grow, we know how those develop and they uproot the sidewalks as they have throughout the city. I have one in front of my house right now that's uprooting the sidewalk. The city has had to come by a few times and carve out the roots so it doesn't encroach into my property. And I can only imagine what it's going to do around that whole property as they grow larger and larger. And of course, as they put them in, they're going to be quite small, I'm sure, to begin with. So there won't be much camouflage there. But that's the only other addition I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good points. Anybody else in the audience?
Why isn't Jerry putting on? So Daniel Gallant.
Daniel Gallant?
I need his address.
Hey, how you doing? Can you hear me?
Yeah, just can we have your address, please?
Yep, I'm at 7 Southwick Road.
Go
I
ahead.
know you asked not to repeat previously asked questions or concerns. But one thing I wanted to bring up was the landscape guy for the developer had mentioned that Southwick was the most affected by the appearance of this side of the property. And then looking at the print, it looks like the dumpster is about 15 feet from my driveway. So I think that's like the biggest concern for me amongst all the other concerns, but the dumpster would be the largest concern I have.
Understandable. And I'm sure right now the attorney for the project is taking notes on that.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's see if we have anybody else.
Jared, I got your John
Is there a John S. that would like to speak?
Yes.
Just name and address for the record, please.
My name is John Salisbury. I live at 7 Emerson, which means that I will be looking straight at the project. For some reason, we're not classified as abutters, even though shade would essentially be cast all the way up to, you know, the people right across the street from us. We're going to look straight at us. I wanted to make a couple of notes. First of all, that most of the neighborhood did not get notifications. In fact, they didn't know what exactly was going to be done this meeting. The last meeting, there was no participation. So just as a note, it would be very helpful if we actually knew what was going on, because there's an awful lot of neighborhood resistance to this. They just don't know what the process is. And saying King Street is not very helpful. Anyway, that's a minor. I know that you guys on zoning board, you're supposed to be, going through and seeing where this project violates zoning. And I'm sure it's going to be a long process, because this project violates zoning more than it meets zoning. The list is going to be long. I would just say that something of that size, that dwarfs all the houses and is completely out of character, is going to blight the entire neighborhood. It's going to be visible 3 blocks away. And their solution that they're going to put little trees at the perimeter is just laughable, because they're going to be tiny. They're not going to mask anything. And the second they get to the point where they're of any use, they're going to have to be taken out, because they're in little tiny strips, which essentially can't accommodate a large tree. Again, traffic is a huge concern. The fact that this was filed months after the project was withdrawn, this seems retaliatory to widespread neighborhood opposition. And I'd also like to note that the rather large number of letters that were submitted in opposition aren't basically being counted. I understand there's a process to that, but I think really getting the rest of the neighborhood, this affects a huge area because of how out of scale it is with the rest of the neighborhood. It's very, very quiet, walkable neighborhood that I really think, a little better communication has to take place. I, for one, I'm not looking forward to looking at this eyesore every time I exit the house. And again, traffic is a problem. It's going to be, I know the flaw with the original traffic was that it was garbage in and therefore it was garbage out. They had to estimate what the traffic was. Traffic was nothing. They never filled the parking lot. And it was never a full service, busy modern hospital. They're assuming the original traffic study, they basically assumed this was Leahy North with people going in and out all the time. It was 60 beds. They stayed months. There was minimal traffic, small staff, minimal traffic. Patients were not going in and out. They had
Okay, we're not concerned with that. We're not concerned with what was there.
Okay, well, but that affects how the traffic, if you estimate the traffic based on something that wasn't there, then the traffic study is garbage.
Well, we haven't really heard from the traffic study yet.
All right, I'll leave that for then.
Okay.
All right.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see if we have anybody else in the audience that would like to speak as an abutter. Jared? You're on.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Thank you to the rest of the board. During the October 5th meeting, Mr. Glenn, as the consultant, talked about the reason for 40B. And I think he said, and I wrote it down, if local ordinances make the project unaffordable, the developer can ask for a waiver from local ordinances. And I don't know if I'm allowed to ask him if I got that correct or if he can respond to me, but I think that that's what you said. And I don't know.
Happy to respond. I think that sounds not word for word, but pretty close. I think I would have said uneconomic, I think is the word they use in the statute.
Okay. And I don't know that there's been a showing that the development of this project would be uneconomic without an elimination or a drastic reduction of Peabody's current ordinances. And I think it's incumbent upon the developer to show that. And I don't know that that's occurred yet. I'm going to make as quickly as I can, Ms. Galucci. I know that there is an argument for safe harbor. And I'm going to argue that the most recent affordable housing plan that came out of the planning board identifies 9.27% of units within the city of Peabody as affordable. And I think that's big A affordable, because there's also little a affordable that for some reason we're not considering counting or willing to fight or exist. But out of those 9.27% that is big A affordable under the statute, we also have a rent control board in this city. And the rent control board tells me, I spoke to a member of the rent control board who tells me that there are 6 mobile home parks within the city that fall under the jurisdiction of the rent control board. I'm not suggesting that all mobile homes qualify as affordable housing, but what I'm saying is that there are, I believe, over 700 mobile homes that fall under governmental authority through the rent control board and are rented at below market value, i.e. affordable as defined by the statute 40B, 80% of market value. And I would argue that the city can add those mobile homes that are under governmental regulation to the big A affordable housing stock, which would push the affordable housing stock in the city of Peabody over 10%. The town of, I forget if it was Reading or North Reading, recently proposed making the argument that mobile homes shouldn't automatically be excluded because they're mobile homes, but other factors should be taken into consideration with the determination of whether or not they fall into the big A affordable housing stock when they were trying to defeat a 40B proposal a few years ago. However, they never got to that argument to the state level because of the third provision of safe harbor, which is GLAM, general land area minimum, because they determined after inquiring to the state that they had about, I believe it was 1.57% of their land was occupied by affordable housing. So they were able to use that safe harbor provision. I tend to agree with Attorney Panos that with all the commercial property in the city, it would probably be hard pressed to meet that standard. Although there is some case law that talks about the exclusion of parking lots and facilities not being used for dwellings or for businesses. And there are an awful lot of parking lots up at the mall and up at Centennial Park. But one of the other safe harbor provisions is meeting adequate yearly progress in a housing plan. And although the housing plan has expired, I would submit that the city of Peabody has been making adequate annual progress towards the goal of increasing the affordable housing units. Under the safe harbor provision, that would be 0.05% of the affordable housing. The planning board has identified that as being 150 affordable units per year. I think Mr. Senabah read a letter earlier today that there were, I forget if it was 230 or 330 units that were renewed into the affordable housing stock using $1.5 million of CPC funds, public funds, which will have doubled or tripled the amount of affordable housing that would be required under this safe harbor provision. In addition, and I'm not 100% sure if the permit has been issued for the Sonic 40B development, but I think it has. And if it has, there are an additional 60 units of affordable housing, which would take the number of affordable housing units created in the city of Peabody in the last year to, I believe, approximately 400, which certainly will have exceeded the 0.05% threshold under that safe harbor provision.
Okay, so I'm going to stop you for a minute, Jared. It looks like you've not slept. It seems like you haven't slept in weeks with all this homework you've done. I'm going to have Kurt, if he doesn't mind, maybe address a few of these little points. And then Ezra, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Yeah, I can. Thank you, Chairman Gallucci. I think I can. I'm not necessarily a expert in regards to the mobile homes and how they qualify, and that's something that maybe somebody else can address it, or at least I can look into that. But in regards to and I know it's been brought up a few times about the housing production plan, we do not have a housing production plan in place. It expired in 2018. My office went through the process of getting funding from community preservation to hire a consultant to update that plan so that we could get that back on the record. And that record is with the Department of Housing and Community Development state. So that expired. We had put the process through. It was before the city council last year. That number that they've identified for the safe harbor is 111 units per year would give you a safe harbor for that year. If you'd produced more, then you'd get a safe harbor up to 2 years. But we don't, even if we've identified and the planning board has endorsed that plan, it needs to be adopted by the city council to make that official. Once we do that, we submit it to the state, and then they have to accept that. So that's the final acceptance. In regards to the units at the tannery too, those were coming off the list. So we preserved them and kept them on the list. So we weren't adding any. We were basically preserving what was there. If we did not provide funding from the community preservation and the housing, and we had housing funds from another project that we used as well. So it wasn't all community preservation. If we didn't provide that funding and they came off and became market rates, we would be basically dropped down to 8.9%. So it wasn't, we were either losing them or maintaining them. They didn't count as additional units. And that was brought up when we met with the state because we talked about providing so much funding and preserving so many units that we wanted some credit, and there was a chuckle basically from the state that said, no, that's not going to cut it. So basically those units were preserved. The Sonic, that was added onto the list. Once the board approved the Sonic project last year, they have 1 year to take out a building permit in order to get that to stay on the list. They did that. We issued them a building permit. They're doing site work. They're preparing the site right now, and they'll probably start most of their construction in the spring. So those counted. So we do have those 60 units. And then we did have some other projects. The city council approved a project on Walnut Street, and we provided or conditioned that for deed restriction for affordable housing. And we also approved a project off of North Shore Road as well. So we added an additional 12 units on top of that 60. So we did get about 72 units put on the list from the last time it was published. But that's the most recent update in regards to how the units can count on that. As I said earlier, I'm not an expert in how the rent control board works and how that counts. I know we've petitioned the state before in regards to mobile homes and have not been successful.
Thank you, Kurt. Ezra, would you like to comment?
Sure. Much of what Kurt said, I was going to say as well. So I will model what you were talking about of saying, yes, that was it. I'll simply add, again, I'm not a lawyer and I'm certainly not here to advise the city, either way about safe harbor. But I would point out this stuff in the regs gets pretty complicated. And really, if you're interested in pursuing that, it's your city solicitor you need to bring in. And really, the regs, I'm pretty sure actually the time is now past for that. The regs contemplate that as essentially the first thing to look at, and that's what Kurt looked at. And that's because your board has been asked to review this because you're the experts in all the development kind of stuff. You know how to work through a complex development project and make it fit as good as possible, or change what needs to be changed to address impacts, or if the impacts can't be addressed, to deny it. But I think any of these comments, if you really want a legal opinion, you need to check with your lawyer. But again, the reason they really front load that in the process is because you're time limited. You only have 180 days to review this thing totally, and you really do need to get into those issues, or else you lose all your chance to make to address the concerns of local impact. So that's all I'd say.
Madam Chair, if I
Thank
could
you.
add to that.
Yes.
Ezra is absolutely right. And to put a number on it, the time to have asserted a safe harbor would have been 15 days from the opening of the public hearing. And if the city had done that, it would have stopped action. It would have stopped your 180-day clock from ticking to allow for DHCD to make the initial determination. And if either side didn't like the initial determination from DHCD, they would have gone to the Housing Appeals Committee. In any event, it's 15 days. We would have had 15 days to respond, and then DHCD has 30 days to make its determination, and then it goes to the Housing Appeals Committee. So I should have offered that that context early on, not to get caught up in the rabbit hole of the safe harbor discussion. But there it is, and I highly recommend that you do vet what I say through Don Kahn's office. But it's also in CMR 760, section 56.03. It's actually in the very last paragraph 8, procedure for board decision, if you want to take a look at that, or have Don Kahn take a look at it. But it's fairly explicit, and it is a timeline that is fairly strict.
I agree with Mr. Panos that it's a 15-day limit. However, the October 6th meeting did not open the public meeting. The chair was very clear that it was a presentation made by the developer, and there would be no public comment. The public meeting did not open until tonight. Tonight is the first opportunity that the public has had an opportunity to speak on this project. So while I agree that the time standard within the Code of Mass Regulations is as Attorney Panos has stated it, I disagree with when the public hearing began. And I would state that based upon, and we could go back to the minutes and the record, these are all recorded. The October 6th meeting was a presentation from the developer only. October 5th, excuse me. I just have a few more points and then I'll move on to your next speaker. Mr. Bellavance made a comment about the affordable housing plan not being approved by the city council. However, in spirit, this city has been acting in accordance with the goal of increasing the affordable housing stock. And I would again argue that the spirit of the city in increasing the affordable housing stock, big A housing stock, is something that should be considered when considering using that provision as a safe harbor. There is no case law on that one way or the other that I found. There also is no case law that I found one way or the other in regard to mobile homes that fall under the governmental authority of a rent control board, which in and of itself inherently makes those units affordable. That's the entire purpose of the rent control board, is to have units available at below market rate rent. I'll close with this because it came up earlier. The density of this project, with, I believe it's it's 133 units proposed. Well, I lost this in my notes and I apologize. The density of this project is well over 40%, 40 units per acre. The town of Medfield had a project proposed, a 40B proposed and submitted to Mass Housing that was rejected by Mass Housing because the project would have had a density of close to 30 units per acre. There are a lot of points of litigation in regard to this development. The first being safe harbor, because it has a strict time constraint. There are other issues for abutters, including the diminution of the value of the property in the neighborhood that hasn't been addressed by the developer, and a whole host of other things. And the 180-day provision that Mr. Glenn and Mr. Panos continue to raise is in the statute. But just like the developer asked to withdraw the special permit application that was properly noticed and put before the city council before a vote can take place, because Councilor Gould was unable to stay at the meeting due to a personal matter, and they didn't have 8 votes to push it through, I would also argue allows for this city to raise a safe harbor exception. They had the opportunity to have the special permit voted. They elected not to, and they can also elect to extend the 180-day time provision within the statute. And in fact, most 40B applications are not acted upon by the Zoning Board of Appeals for most cities and towns within the 180 days prescribed. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Jared. We have Kelly that would like to speak now. I don't see her. Kelly?
I'm resident. I
need your name and address for the record, please.
Kelly Donovan, 4 Augusta Street. I'm diagonal to the JB Thomas development. It's amazing to me as a resident here, and I've been here for 20 years now. My husband's been here his whole life, that the magnitude of this project is so huge for that little piece of land. And not only, you know, I agree with everything everyone has written in the neighborhood, but it's like on a Saturday, I can't get down Ellsworth Road today. We have to weave in and out of cars just to get down Ellsworth Road. And that's not even on a traffic day. That's on a morning weekend with COVID. And I'm amazed at the lack of communication from the city. I got more information on the Endicott Street project than I have JB Thomas. And now you're talking JB Thomas development. We're going to get hit with Endicott Street development, which is half a block away. It's too much. It's way too much. And it's amazing that, you know, Mass Housing did approve this. I am baffled. I mean, talk about quality of life and overpopulation, especially with COVID, and have we learned anything? And here we are willing to overpopulate a small, tiny area that is not necessarily downtown area. We're far enough back from downtown. We're not considered downtown by, you know, McDonald's, CVS, you know, Petrillo's, City Hall. I'm just, I don't know, I can't see, 3 buildings. It's not that the neighborhood didn't want it developed. We wanted it developed responsibly. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's see if we have anybody else.
Roger S.
Roger S.
I have to promote him to panelist.
You're muted, Fran.
Roger, Roger, we can see you and you need to unmute yourself if you'd like to speak. You're still muted. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
There you go. So we need your name and address for the record.
Sure. Roger Sonia, 15 Augusta Street. So I agree with everything that was said before. Just had a couple questions just about the timing, because we're hearing about safe harbor and that type of thing now. Is that brought by the city beforehand? I guess that's kind of a question. Now we're kind of in that next step of mass housing approved it. Going forward, certainly we all have common concerns, but it's also just understanding where we are in the process, because I think also somebody, I think it was Ryan Melville brought up, the property is a dump right now. It's a safety concern. I think a lot of us would like to see it, leveled. Also that gives us pause going forward. How will the property be maintained going forward? But kind of, if you guys could kind of fill in the blanks with what are our next steps, and what are we realistically looking at? Because I don't think any of us want like a 12-year battle where money gets spent. What's our realistic view of working this, going through? Because I assume 40B, the whole thing is you can't use zoning to block things. So can you kind of provide a context of what our realistic expectations are? Please.
Jason, would you want to comment on that?
Sorry, I was muted. Yes, I think the plan is to immediately apply for a demo permit upon issuance of the comprehensive permit. That would obviously be the first thing that we would tend to. We have heard concerns regarding the condition and maintenance of the property. We now have, in response to those concerns, a Hemisphere staff person who visits the site a couple of days a week at the minimum. We have a landscaper every other week who tries to keep the property tidy. We had a procurement issue with regard to, the mesh shielding that's up over the fence having blown around. The procurement issue was we tried to get it replaced, and our suppliers simply can't find that stuff. So we're maintaining what's there. We boarded up broken windows and pretty much have engaged in a security plan that we hope will begin to address some of these issues. But let's not disabuse ourselves of reality here. This is an abandoned hospital that we've made available to the Massachusetts Bomb Squad and to local public safety apparatus to conduct various fire drills and bomb squad drills and so forth. So some of the blighting you see is kind of a result of making that property available.
I didn't realize they were part of the Crips.
I'm sorry?
I didn't realize they were part of the Crips. There's gang symbols on it, which are kind of,
Yeah, I look, people through the chair have breached the property. We can't, we report it to the local police department when we see it. We respond by continuing to secure the building, but there is only so much we can do until that building comes down. And the plan, as I said, is to take the building down once we get the comprehensive permit. Otherwise, we're going to do the best we can to continue to maintain it and do hopefully a better job in maintaining it. And look, we're not going to please everybody in this neighborhood. That's apparent to me tonight, but we're going to do our best to continue to build that goodwill and maintain the property as best as we can under the circumstances. I mean, for example, just last Friday, when we visited the property, someone dumped on the Ellsworth Street old emergency room side of the property, someone dumped their used, broken down water boiler right on the perimeter of the fence. You know, we address that when we see it, but there's a lot of bad behavior going on, and we're going to continue to monitor it and continue to report the matters to local law enforcement, but there's only so much we can do in response to people's bad behavior.
Yes, Jared, Jason, you're right. You know, it's out of your control. It's out of everybody's control. You know, and you can only do at this point exactly what you're doing. Okay, Roger, you all set?
Yeah, just if you could just the timing, you know, the 180 days, just kind of, can you take us through, I guess, that piece?
Ezra?
Sure, I can take you through that. So the 180 days is often the figure people throw out for how much time the zoning board has to review it. That basically the clock starts running at the first hearing and it ends when they need to close the hearing. Some city solicitors will tell you they like to also include the writing of the decision in that 180 days as well. Some say that can happen after. You know, that's why they get paid the big bucks, is to argue over that. But basically about 6 months is what the statute contemplates as a reasonable amount of time to review a large project like this. I think a school committee member, Jared Huckman, was absolutely correct. There are many projects across the state that go over 180 days. You know, so you might say, wait, if it's a limit, why do they go longer? And the reason they go longer is, as with everything, there can be exceptions. In this case, we actually have seen an exception already. The hearing was supposed to be opened within, I think, 30 days of the application being submitted. It wasn't a good time for the city. You asked for an extension, the applicant granted it, and then you open the hearing later. The same thing can happen 180 days from now. You'll be coming up to that deadline. You're supposed to give a decision. If you feel like, geez, we're really hammering off these issues, we'd love another 30 days to get through it all. Can we have that? I'd say 95% of the time, applicants are more than glad to grant that, rather than hold your feet to the fire, demand that you make a hurried decision, fight things out in court and all that. The times when those sort of exemptions generally are not voluntarily granted is when there's a breakdown of goodwill sometime over those 180 days. If you get 6 months in and you haven't made progress and you ask for more time, and the applicant really feels like this is your own mistake, it's because you wasted month after month after month going over the same issues, not meeting, that's when we really see problems. That's one of the reasons I'm supposed to be here, is to try to help make sure we use that time as productive as possible, move through the issues from big to small, check them off, figure out what can be resolved, work with the peer reviewers. But then, you know, I have hopes that we can have this all done very efficiently, but I'm not rushing it. I mean, I'd like to see, I mean, it's a big project, it's your neighborhood. I'd say, let's see how we go, but let's do it assuming that 180 days is enough time. And if we need more, we'll worry about that in whatever that is, March or April. Beyond that, then of course there are all sorts of deadlines around the time to then render the decision, the time the decision can be appealed by the applicant, appealed by the abutters, how those work, you know, and then even when that's all done, then there's an amount of time for them to have to start making progress. If they don't do anything for, I believe it's 2 or 3 years, the permit might lapse. That rarely happens. but that's basically how it goes. And I believe in the application, they've listed a kind of a timetable they're imagining for construction, 4 or 5 years, I think. I would say if this is a concern for the board or for the neighbors, exactly how the construction is phased, that's fair game for conditions as well. I think often people think about conditions in terms of the number of units, the parking spaces, traffic and safety and that sort of stuff. But there can be other conditions, around construction, around phasing. Generally, the rule should be you shouldn't apply conditions to this project that you wouldn't apply to other projects in town, right? Or else people start thinking that sounds like you're making an exception for affordable housing. But in general, if there are questions or issues people have about the timing overall that really will affect your quality of life and the success of the project, those are fine for the board to include. Does that help?
That was perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Roger, thank you very much. Do we have?
You're on mute, Fran.
Oh, sorry. Yes, we do have somebody else. Having a hard time with this tonight. E6530, did you want to speak again?
Yeah, I just wanted to make one more comment, if possible. Can you hear me?
Yep, quickly.
Oh, yes. Hi, Attorney Panos. Can you hear me? Jason?
I can hear you, yes.
Yes.
Could you repeat
I
your name?
just
I'm sorry.
want to make one small comment that there's only a few of us here speaking tonight, but believe me, there are quite a few people in this neighborhood that are not for this size of this project.
Could we have your name and address again, please?
Sure, Brenda Rizzo, 27 Kosciuszko Street.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else?
Thank you.
We don't see anybody else right now. Oh, wait a minute.
Hold on. There's one person on the phone. If they want to speak, they have to press *9.
There's one person on the phone. I'm told if you would like to speak, you have to press *9.
All right, I have somebody on Galaxy S8.
Galaxy S8. Are you there?
Unmute yourself.
Unmute yourself. There you go. There you go.
Is it me?
You can speak.
Oh, we just wanted to say this is Lisa and Fernando Gomes.
And was there anything else, Lisa, you wanted to say?
We're at 6 King Street.
You have to shut off one of your devices. You're echoing all over the place. And so am I.
1 minute, please. Okay, we just wanted to be on the record as agreeing with our friends and neighbors who have already spoken and written in.
Perfect. And what's your address, Lisa?
6 King Street.
Great.
6 King Street.
Thank you. Anybody else?
That was tough. What was all that reverb?
I don't know.
Okay, I muted them.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Do we have anybody else? We're looking. Ezra.
I just wanted to follow up on one of the residents had mentioned that there were more letters that haven't been received. And I just want to be sure that people do know letters should be able to still be, I guess they're still being sent to City Hall, is that right? And this will be received and read into the record. But if you have a concern that you've sent a letter and it hasn't been received,
Send it again.
Send it again and check in with Carla, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, just because, we do want to make sure everything's included, and the reason that's important, everything can be included right up till we close the hearing, but the earlier we have things in, we're going to be getting these comments to the applicant and also to the city's peer reviewers to make sure that any of these issues that are identified are addressed. That's why we do the whole process. So, this is a great time now. We have those days now. So, thanks.
Yeah, I emailed them back.
When Carla McGrath, the clerk of the zoning board of appeals, when she receives a letter, she confirms back to them. So yes, if there's anybody listening and you feel that you would like to send another letter or a letter, you just send it to the zoning board of appeals clerk, Carla McGrath, right here at City Hall, and that'll be fine. So it looks like this is it, I believe. There's nobody else in the audience that would like to speak. Any board members? Okay.
Through the chair, if I could.
Yes.
We heard quite a bit of legal information tonight, so I'm going to make a recommendation that we send the tape of this meeting to the city solicitor to sort of validate the validity of all the information that we heard, all the legal advice we heard from some from lawyers and some not from lawyers. So it was a little bit both sides of the street, and I think we need to know the validity of some of these things. The safe harbor information is pretty intriguing. I know Kurt did his due diligence and did the best that he could do as determining whether we do qualify for some safe harbor. But, it wouldn't hurt to double check it again to see if some of the validity is there. Also, one thing I did hear tonight was the size of the project. And, when you become a member of the zoning board, you do get guidance from the state as to 40Bs and you get little books you get to read. And they basically say that you basically become a negotiator and you try to do what's best. So I haven't seen anything that tells me why 133 units is the number. I'd like to see something from the developer. Is it just a developer's formula that says it's not financially feasible if it's less than 133? And how do you determine it's 133? Are you willing to go less? I don't know if this is the place for the conversation to be held, but it's a good starting point because I'll be honest with you, I think there was some real concern from the neighbors about the size and the height of the buildings, and I would have to agree. And to be honest with you, Jason, as far as the public safety of that building, I think you're doing a great job of doing the best you can, but it's not getting any better. I have some history in the city, and there's a building in Ward 1. It's called the L. Fine Building that all kinds of bad things happen. So you know what can happen when those buildings lay like they are, like it's laying there. So all I can say is keep up the good work because it's a terrible looking site and something needs to be done at that site. So I don't know if it's if you want to respond to that, Jason, but it's information I will be looking for in the future. What's your number? Where do we go? I don't see anywhere where the board has to accept the 133 number, to be honest with you. So I know that's information I'll be looking for. And if that is the number, then I'd love to see the formula that says I can't do this project for less. So with that being said, I think there's a lot of information that we're getting, but I hope the members of the board we're going to have to start talking about this ourselves and talking about all the information we want to get. Third-party review is great. Peer review is awesome. Everybody's doing their hard work, but when push comes to shove, we're the board that they have to satisfy. And to be honest with you, there's a lot of information. There's a lot of letters. There's a lot of good information coming. There's a lot of good points being raised. So you can talk about this timeline, I hate to say it, Roger, but it's not going to happen, I don't think, real fast. There's a lot of issues that need to be addressed. It'll eventually, we have to give them the opportunity to address our concerns, and then we make a decision. And if we can't make, and then when the decision's made, of course, they have the ability to appeal. There's all kinds of things that can happen. So to give you a timeline, I don't think would be fair because we don't know. I think there's a lot that has to be done, a lot that's been done, a lot that has to be done. And with that, I'll give it back to you, Fran, and thank you.
Thank you. So a lot to think about here. Everybody involved, a lot to think about. Anybody else?
Madam Chair, to that point, and I don't know if Ezra wants to talk a little bit more about this, but earlier in the week, Ezra, myself, Kurt Bellavance and Will Paulitz had a telephone conversation about peer review and structuring how we move forward with that, because as you recall, when you opened the hearing on October 5th, it was a concern of mine that we start moving the process forward of peer review, because I agree 100% with Barry Osborne that the quicker, and I don't want to mischaracterize what you said, Barry, but the quicker we can move through this process, the quicker we can stabilize that property and get it developed and mitigate a lot of the maintenance issues that are really hard to control when we have some bad actors who are taking those buildings and blighting them.
And if I could, I appreciate that, Jason, but
yeah.
I think the quicker as far as that goes, but what I'm really saying is it might not be that quick, because
sure,
I just don't want you to get the feeling that you have to satisfy the city's, the community development department or Will Paulitz. You also have to satisfy us. And if we have any questions, you have to provide us with that information. And to be honest with you, we haven't even given you any information that we want. So we're just sort of sitting back saying, all right, let's see what gets addressed. And we might come back to you and say, hey, it's not addressed to our satisfaction. To be honest with you, this is what we're looking for. Because this is a tough neighborhood, as you know. Everybody knew this was going to be a tough one, and it's going to be. We have to do our due diligence. That's all there is to it.
And through the chair, I don't want to mischaracterize, but there are a lot of moving parts, as you pointed out, and facilitating moving those moving parts forward to attempt to satisfy the board's concerns, because actually, Barry, I will say this, it comes down to you. It comes down to the 5 members and the 2 alternates. You guys are the decision makers here. So it's all within the parameters of the regulations and 40B guidelines and the law. There are certain things that you have a right to know, and we are going to do our darndest. I think we put forward a very comprehensive application package with a lot of information that's being reviewed as we speak, or will be shortly. All I'm suggesting is the quicker we can move to facilitate those moving parts, I think the better off all of us are going to be, so that we can organize the information and compartmentalize in a manner that makes it all make sense. If that description kind of puts it all into perspective. I've been doing this for 20 years, and the easier I can make the flow of information, whether it's controversial or not, the better off we all are. And if I can do my part to facilitate for the board the free flow of information from our perspective, get quick responses to peer review, we're all in.
Okay.
So with that, if I could, through the chair, ask Ezra to kind of characterize what we did discuss and how he, along with Kurt, sees the peer review and the schedule moving forward, how that's all going to play out, at least as we think it should, tied to that peer review process and getting you the information that you're looking for. and that you need. If you'll indulge that, Madam Chair, I think it'll be beneficial for all of you. You're in mute.
Ezra?
Sure. Happy to just comment on that. So we did talk last meeting about the possibility of peer review, which is a fairly common thing. Just for the taxpayers at home, you should all know one important component of this is the city can require it, but the city doesn't pay for it. City asks the applicant to put up the money, and then the city will hire its own experts, engineers or they're almost all engineers, to review the documents they've been given. And that's true with all sorts of zoning projects, but it's even more important with a 40B, where it might be, they tend to be out of scale with what you normally reviewed. That's not intended to substitute for the other kinds of expertise in the room, including the very important expertise the board has, the town officials, who I'm really happy to hear from tonight, as well as the residents. So all of that is expertise. But because you can get into some pretty technical stuff, especially around water and sewer and stormwater and traffic, we typically require applicants to present the information and then hire our own experts to review it and advise the board as to whether it passes muster. As Jason said, the city has gone out for, we basically worked with Will Politz on trying to figure out who does the city normally work with and feel comfortable with. And went through the bidding process that they normally do, found not one, not two, not three, but 4 different peer review teams to review traffic engineering, water and sewer, stormwater and site planning, and there was one other, maybe it was landscaping and screening, I think was the 4th. We would probably schedule, or I'd recommend to the board that we sort of sequence it, from large to small. That's generally how these tend to work well. So you use those 180 days as well as possible. For example, you saw some of that already tonight with Captain Dowling giving, some fire prevention information, because if that's not going to work, if you're not going to be able to build a safe site, safe housing here, go back to the drawing board or find a new site. You want to find that. Next is probably traffic, because you need to sort of put a black box around the site, see what the impacts are going to be, and can a project be developed there that will avoid negative impacts. Once that's done, then you move into the site and you start looking at stormwater, sewer, and water. And then from there, you get into things like screening and landscaping. What's important, though, is early on, as I said before, we want to flesh out all the issues, because we're not going to just have the applicant and the peer reviewers working at these one at a time, waiting for the next step. They could start working on some of them while we're solving the larger issues at the beginning. So that's basically where we did meet with Will and with Kurt, and looked at the scopes of the peer reviewers. We actually pushed a little harder and said we want to be sure that peer reviewers are able to come to these public hearings as well, so that the board can hear from them. And also that there'll be, I think we added 10 more hours as a minimum for sort of some back and forth, so that if they're not getting the information they need, they can ask the applicant, I need more information on this or that, or can you explain how you did this calculation? The applicant agreed to all that. And it's basically, it's a fairly standard process, but if we go through that money, and we still need more time, then they would go to amend those contracts. But that's basically where we're at on that. Does that pretty much cover what you're looking for?
Through the chair, just to recap that conversation a little more, the 4 areas of peer review were stormwater management, water, sewer, and traffic. Those were the 4 categories. The 4 consultants who were being brought on board: Weston and Sampson for water, Ty and Bond for sewer, World Tech for traffic, and Horsley Witten. All of them are good and obviously acceptable to us. And once we get the individuals who are responsible from those organizations, once we learn who they are, we will pair them with their counterparts on the development team, and they'll start working through the issues on an ongoing basis. As Ezra said, we're not knocking off one issue at a time. We're going to be working through all of them concurrently. And you know, the development team, all of whom, by the way, are online and listening here, they're fully prepared for that, and we're going to plow through it as quickly as we can once it's all in place.
Great.
And if I could just say one more thing, Fran, and I'll make it very quick, thank you, is to the people, for the people listening, you know, I know you listened about water and sewer and things like that. And that's, if this was, we just understand, we got the only bite of this apple, this board. This is a comprehensive permit. So don't think that we don't take quality of life, impact on the community, all those type of things that you're talking about seriously, because we do. And as much as all this, the engineers and everybody talks about the 4 major issues, be assured that this board will do everything they can to address all your concerns. Will we get everything we want? I don't know. Will we approve it? I don't know. How willing is the developer to work with us? And that's what it's all going to come down to. And I just want to assure you that these issues will be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. So Jason, you have a few issues to think about for next meeting, and that brings us up to a date for the next meeting, which is already scheduled.
Yes, pardon me.
Already scheduled for December 7th. December 7th, we will all meet again for this project, and we will hear answers. We will hear as much new information as we can, and we will take it from there.
Can I ask a question based on, you know, what we had previously discussed among the community development folks and Ezra? There was discussion about also going into a traffic presentation, even though we know that World Tech is probably not going to be finished with its review, or at least in time for December 7th. It would be anticipated that we would give our presentation. World Tech would continue to conduct its peer review and continue the traffic topic in the following hearing, whenever that gets scheduled, January, February, whenever you guys decide it's best to move forward. And I only ask that because we need to be prepared to put on the full-on presentation of the traffic report, which is going to be a lot more detailed than the initial presentation when you open the hearing on October 5th.
Jason, are you saying that you would like to bring forth your traffic presentation?
On December 7th.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
If that's okay, if that pleases the board, and that way we can get that ball rolling. To Ezra's point, the big issue is traffic. We heard it time and time again from the abutters through the letters. We identified it as an issue. So I think it will probably realistically spill over into 2 meetings.
Okay.
But if we know in advance that we need to be prepared to do our traffic presentation on December 7th, then we can prepare accordingly.
So does the board agree with that? Do you think that that's a good idea, board members? Everybody's shaking their head yes. Barry? Ed? Mr. Slattery? Okay, Jason, that'll be fine.
I might also just add, just to clarify, because a lot of the comments, there were certainly a lot about traffic, but a number about parking as well. Just to make, it might be good to include that in this, in the December meeting. So traffic, and also, is there sufficient parking on the site? I assume the peer reviewer will be looking at both of those things as well. So, and that can help really for phase the, we basically don't want to have the same meeting every month. We want to move through the issues. And so I think that would
Oh, no, yeah, no, we're not gonna have the same meeting every month, believe me.
yeah,
That doesn't happen here.
thanks.
Okay, I think that this was a productive, informative, questionable, very, very, very good meeting. I want to thank everybody. We need a motion to, well, first of all, everybody all set with December 7th? All the board members, because we did agree on that. Okay, so I think right now we need a motion to adjourn. And don't forget, we also have a regularly scheduled meeting next Monday. Regular ZBA meeting. So may I have a motion to adjourn? Oh, Kurt, yes?
Yes, no, you just want to make a motion to continue to the 7th, and then also say that it's going to be on Zoom, because at this point we can't hold an in-person public hearing. So you just want to make that so that you can vote on that, and then you can adjourn.
Okay. Can I have a motion to continue this meeting till December 7th via Zoom?
Motion
Or
to
is it
continue.
via?
Motion to continue via Zoom.
And
December 7th.
hearing, just to,
December 7th, yes. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Is it via or via? Is it route or route? Okay, motion to adjourn. I need a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Good night, everyone. Thank you very much.
We have a second from Jason.
Julie,
Julie, from Julie, thank you. Okay, from Julie. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week.
thank you.
Great meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.